Jihadis at your doorstep, after Europe, is America next? Written by Rakesh Krishnan Simha. The Brussels neighborhood of Molenberg may look unassuming, but within lies a virtual hotbed of terror. A significant number of Islamic terrorists, including those who conducted the Charlie Hebdo massacre, have come from here. Most of the Belgians who left to join ISIS were residents of this jihadi enclave in the heart of Brussels. It prompted former French journalist Eric Zemmour, who is now a far-right politician, to write that instead of bombing the ISIS capital, Raqqa, France should bomb Molenberg. Islamic terrorism in Europe has been a severe threat since the late 20th century, carried out by groups like Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. In 2017, the EU counter-terrorism coordinator Gilles de Kerchove stated in an interview that there were more than 50,000 radicals and jihadists in Europe. In 2016, French authorities said that 15,000 of the 20,000 individuals on the list of security threats belonged to Islamist movements. The years 2014 to 2016 saw more people killed by Islamic terrorist attacks in Europe than all previous years combined, with the highest rate of attack plots per year. These attacks have led to significant security operations in European countries. France experienced the highest number of attacks in 2021, with 5, followed by Germany, with 3. Americans are alarmed by reports detailing escalating unrest in Europe, where significant Muslim migration is causing substantial challenges. This includes severe incidents of mass terrorism, a rise in sexual violence against European women, and the emergence of large, jihadist-influenced neighborhoods that even law enforcement often avoid. Yet, few realize that America is heading down the same suicidal path. As veteran investigative journalist Leo Hohmann documents in Stealth Invasion, Muslim Conquest Through Immigration and Resettlement Jihad, an international network of mostly Muslim Brotherhood-linked activists has been building its ranks within the United States for more than 3 decades, aided by a U.S. immigration system seemingly obsessed with welcoming as many unassimilable migrants with anti-Western values as possible. As a result, largely secret plans for significant population changes in hundreds of U.S. cities and towns are already being implemented. This transformation is taking place not only in gateway cities like New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles but in all-American towns like Twin Falls, Idaho, and St. Cloud, Minnesota, where tensions brought on by the importation of hostile cultures are already causing shock waves. An excellent example of the type of immigrants and refugees who are being settled across the U.S. is this female supporter of Hamas in Gaza. In a Turkish TV interview, she claimed that Palestinians aim to serve Allah by committing such acts as sacrifices, including burning Jews alive. She asserted that Palestinians are committed to completing what she sees as a divine mandate to impose Islam on the world, paralleling the genocidal intentions of Hitler. By Allah, only the people of Palestine will restore the honor of the Islamic nation. According to the Muslim Brotherhood's documents seized by the FBI, civilization jihad involves infiltrating and conquering Western democracies from within. The goal is to partner with leftist and anarchist groups, such as Black Lives Matter, to tear at the fabric of Western civilization and the Judeo-Christian values that undergird it. They intend to use liberal immigration laws to create settlements for Islam in America, which in turn become enclaves of non-assimilated Muslims who can quickly become radicalized by a preacher at a local mosque or by watching a YouTube video posted by an imam in Pakistan. Terror attacks in Chattanooga, Orlando, San Bernardino, St. Cloud, Minnesota, and the Chelsea area of Manhattan were executed by Muslim immigrants or, in the cases of San Bernardino and Orlando, by the children of Muslim immigrants. Additionally, a notable number of thwarted attacks since 9/11 have been planned by Muslim refugees and immigrants. The clash of civilizations is no longer an academic debate, it is coming to neighborhoods across America. However, most Americans are either engrossed in their consumerist lifestyles or distracted by the political slugfest between the Republicans and Democrats to notice that the jihadi ogre is now at their doorstep. Indeed, while much of the world fights an active war against Islamic terrorism, many influential Americans are still in denial about who truly is the enemy. According to author Robert Spencer, elites across North America fight to silence those who argue, compellingly, that the roots of terrorism are within Islam itself, which has evolved into far more than a religion. It is a radical and dangerous political ideology which consciously, if often tacitly, places itself in opposition to democracy and basic human rights. While Europeans have belatedly realized their blunder in allowing unchecked mass migration from the Islamic crescent into their continent, there is no sense of urgency in the U.S. to secure its borders. The Biden-Harris administration has done everything to encourage illegal immigration into the country. As many as 10 million have snuck in through Mexico and spread out nationwide. The entry of over 90,000 undocumented Afghans after the US-backed government collapsed in Kabul has added to the problems of law enforcement agencies, as many of these refugees have taken to crimes, including the raping of minors. As Spencer notes, if Western Europe does become Islamized, as demographic trends suggest, before too long America will be facing a world that is drastically different and more forbidding than today's. And that same process of Islamization will proceed here, unless enough people wake up in time to head it off. The Muslim population in the United States is much smaller than that of Western Europe. The active supremacists among them are even smaller in number. Nonetheless, the same things that have happened in Europe could easily happen in the United States. What is unfolding in Europe aligns perfectly with the warnings experts have issued for decades. According to American author Gad Saad, this is a simple issue. When two cultures that are fundamentally opposed to one another coexist, the likelihood of harmonious integration diminishes significantly. There exists a substantial historical record, over 1,400 years, that many in the West seem to overlook. Cure yourself of ostrich parasitic syndrome. See the world as it is rather than the unicornia that you wish existed. Myth of the moderate Muslim. The big question is, where do the loyalties of Muslims lie? With America? Or with Islam? If Islam were only a religion, this question wouldn't make sense. However, because governance falls under religion in Islam, loyalty to Islam includes religion and government. This issue has become most important in the military and law enforcement. Unfortunately, numerous incidents have been experienced in both. Muslims have been faced with whether to do their jobs in upholding the laws and keeping the peace or to honor their loyalty to Islam, and they have done the latter. There was the case of Police Sergeant Muhammad Weiss Rasul, an Afghan immigrant in Fairfax County, Virginia, who tipped off a Muslim friend who was being watched for terrorism. Rasul's partner in the police force, Sergeant Naveed Butt, of Pakistani origin, also came under suspicion, though he didn't lose his job as Rasul did. As a mole for the Council on American Islamic Relations, a virulent jihadi organization, in the Fairfax Department, he continues to undermine the authority of the Fairfax County Police Department, particularly within the Muslim community. There is also evidence that New York law enforcement is experiencing similar problems. A Muslim FBI agent in Los Angeles allegedly compromised a multi-agency terrorism investigation by tipping off the ringleader of a Pakistan-based terror cell that the Joint Terrorism Task Force had under surveillance for more than 2 years. The agent allegedly compromised several investigations. The espionage was so extensive that the FBI director was briefed about the mushrooming scandal. Within the U.S. military, the most famous incident is the Fort Hood shootings of unarmed soldiers by Major Nidal Hasan. There have been similar incidents on a smaller scale in American war zones in Afghanistan and Iraq, which are separate from the killing of American troops. This is a serious and growing problem that hacks at the root of the U.S. Homeland Security system. If your trusted neighborhood cop is an Islamic terrorist, what security does your family have? Spencer comments on the divided loyalty of Muslims living in non-Muslim countries. Everybody's avid to find moderate Muslims and say, see, these people are the ones we can trust and everything's okay. The thing is that there certainly are moderate Muslims. In other words, Muslims who are not interested in beheading us or asserting political supremacy and hegemony in destroying the American system and imposing Islamic law. There's millions of such Muslims. The thing is that there were millions of Germans who were not Nazis. There were millions of Russians who were not Soviet communists. But they did not do anything. And for many reasons they were not able to do anything to stand up against the people who were the organized and energized vanguard. And that's what we have today. Understanding the threat. In its traditional understanding, defensive jihad is viewed as a legitimate struggle to protect Muslims from aggressors. It is governed by normative principles that dictate the conduct of warfare, including using minimal force, protecting non-combatants, and avoiding ambushes and assassinations. However, contemporary radical interpretations have significantly expanded the notion of defensive jihad, transforming it into a call for a global Islamic revolution. This new perspective is rooted in a pervasive sense of victimhood within the Muslim world regarding its relationship with the West. Such radical views disregard established limits on warfare. For instance, Osama bin Laden's February 1998 fatwa explicitly called for the killing of Americans and their allies, both civilian and military. By placing armed jihad at the center of their ideology, radical Islamists have revived a theological framework that had largely faded in Europe following the 17th century wars of religion. While many scholars argue that the core tenets of Islam do not inherently promote violence more than other religions, the radical interpretation of religious warfare remains a significant catalyst for ongoing violence. The politics of Islamist radicalism has bred a mentality of bello ergo sum, I fight, therefore I exist. Islamic leaders constantly need popular jihads to boost their leadership status. In this backdrop, Spencer says the most critical decision the world must make is to accept that Islam is not a religion of peace. It has an inherently political character that is being brought to the West by immigrants and will cause more trouble in the future. The jihadists have not hijacked it. Peaceful Muslims should be encouraged but do not have a sufficiently influential voice in the Islamic world to allow them to be counted on. The jihadists will not be bought off by negotiations or concessions. This is the revival of a 1,400-year-old war, and we need to be prepared for the fact that it will not end anytime soon, and prepared to defend ourselves militarily and ideologically. Adds Ronald K. Pierce in Islamic Violence in America's Streets, stop insisting that Islam is a religion of peace. It is not. Americans need to understand the fight we are in. Those moderate Muslims who tolu support American/Western values must publicly take on the jihadists within their religion. Without this public commitment, Americans and Westerners will not accept their moderate label. The negative image of Muslims has been years in the making and fed with very dramatic incidents of anti-Americanism, including 9/11 and many similar attacks. This skepticism over Muslim intentions won't be changed easily. Zero-sum option. Because the inflexible nature of Islamic ideology won't allow Muslims to live as peaceful and equal citizens, the U.S. has no other option but to end immigration from Muslim countries. This is a simple matter of national security. It will, of course, be condemned as racism, but the harsh reality is that you cannot tell peaceful Muslims from jihadis in any discernible manner. And so it is simply ridiculous and suicidal to continue to import whole communities of Muslims from hot jihad areas like Somalia and Syria and Pakistan into the United States and drop them down into American communities. Pierce agrees, revise immigration policies with the jihad ideology in view or end all Muslim immigration to the United States. We must stop admitting jihadists into the United States, and it may be wise to curtail or end all Muslim immigration for 5 to 10 years. U.S. policymakers must recognize that mere public relations efforts, apologies, acts of appeasement, or policy shifts will not eliminate anti-Americanism in the Islamic crescent. Muslims have no interest in integration or assimilation. All they want to do is Islamize America. The best Washington can do is demonstrate unwavering support for its interests and allies. Citations.